New Zealand and the United States have been the two partners, I think, in the Trans-Pacific Partnership that have always believed in a high-quality, comprehensive deal, and I think that that can be achieved.
We discussed a timeline whereby before the end of the year we're able to document that can create jobs both in New Zealand and the United States and the other countries that are participating.
That was New Zealand Prime Minister John Key and U.S. President Barack Obama in the Oval Office at the White House this afternoon, setting a timeline for a new Trans-Pacific trade agreement. The two countries have been strong proponents of a new deal aimed at boosting commerce between members. The TPP, as it's known, includes 12 nations bordering the Pacific Ocean. In addition to creating a free trade zone among the participants, it also aims to improve labor conditions and environmental protections. According to reports, the next round of negotiations will take place in Vancouver, Canada, early next month. For more on the status of TPP negotiations, I'm now joined on set by Ziad Haider of the Truman National Security Project. Thanks so much for coming in. We appreciate your time. So let's talk about this timeline that the U.S. president set down. By the end of the year, when we don't even have the U.S. Congress giving the president the authority he needs to really negotiate, is it even possible?
Right. Well, Jessica, I think the question really is what type of a document does the president have in mind? If he's talking about having a draft document there to get a conversation going before Congress, then that I think is certainly feasible. If we're talking about a final agreement, I think that's going to be difficult, largely because of the issues that are plaguing the negotiations between U.S. and Japan on the issue of agriculture tariffs on the Japanese side in particular. You know, for example, we've had the Australian trade negotiations to go well into the early side of next year. But I think the two important things to note really here are that, you know, one is Congress is going to, regardless of what's put before it, is going to have a very robust response, to be euphemistic about it, to put it very lightly. You know, we have to remember when the president's heading to Asia, this is going to be just 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks after the midterm elections. He's going for the G20 and APEC. So trade is always a politically fraught issue in the U.S., and we can expect a response. Second is, and I think this is a more hopeful note, is that whenever the president makes a visit to the region, it injects a certain degree of momentum into negotiations. There's a desire to show some degree of deliverables. So I'm hopeful that that might be able to actually push us over the edge, but it remains to be seen.
So let's talk about the main stumbling block right now. Basically, Washington and Tokyo can't agree on tariffs on U.S. autos, on Japanese agricultural products. What do you think could get them over the hump? Right.
Well, you know, actually, I have a bit more of an optimistic take on this. I think when the president was in Japan in April, actually, the Japanese did agree to make some deep cuts in their tariffs on agricultural products. So that is promising. But at the same time, reducing tariffs is not the same thing as eliminating it. And secondly, I think many of the other TPP parties are wondering whether or not they're going to get some sort of a similar concession from Tokyo. So to get over that logjam, we're really going to have to keep at these negotiations. And I think the real heart of this is still going to be with the U.S. and Japan.
And now you've got John Key saying publicly and privately to the U.S. president, hey, look, if we can't get this done with all 12 of us, I'm happy to let Japan step away from the negotiating table. I'm happy to do this on our own.
Right. Well, I think that might be a sign of frustration about the fact that these negotiations have been as protracted and about the fact that it really centers on the U.S.-Japan dialogue. But I really think Japan is an essential part of this negotiation. And so I kind of view that more as just sort of a way of putting some degree of pressure. But I think we do want to see Japan in this for it to have the heft that we would like.
You also have domestic U.S. politics playing into this with the Trade Promotion Authority, which is most assuredly not going to be voted on by Congress before what we have what we call the 2016 midterm elections. So that means that the U.S. president is kind of sending people to the negotiating table without authority, without true authority. If they were to go with the TPA, then they would have the ability to say, hey, as soon as we get this signed, sealed, and delivered, it's done.
Right. Yeah, you know, I don't think that I think the parties understand the nature of our system. You know, first of all, many of these countries have to actually look over their shoulder. They have domestic opposition at home. They have to get some form of approval from their legislative bodies. So they understand that dynamic. But secondly, what I see as a more sort of sophisticated form of that understanding is that many of them are actually engaging with Capitol Hill. Their diplomats are going up there to make the case for the agreement. So to that, in my mind, means that, yes, they're aware that if they make concessions without TPA being there, there's some risk of backfire. You're making concessions without a final text. But at the same time, I think they also understand that this is the reality of negotiating where the U.S. is involved. Congressional approval, checks and balances, the nature of our system. So it's a fact of the negotiation. I don't think it's a weakness per se.
40,000-foot view, what do you think the probability of really getting these labor conditions and environmental protections into an agreement? And more broadly, what's the economic benefit to the world if this happens?
Right. Well, you know, I think 40,000-foot view, we're looking at an agreement that has 12 countries, right? 40% of the global economy, a third of global trade. So this is big, and this is something that's extremely ambitious. And as a result, the negotiations over issues like labor and environment or intellectual property are going to be difficult. You know, you have countries of very differing sizes and very differing stages of their development. But at the same time, I think, you know, we've been at this for over 18 negotiations, 18 rounds of negotiations. The president indicated his intent to join, and for the U.S. to join in 2009, and we're going at it. But I think we're really down to the critical last portion. I won't put a number on the percentage, but the point is I think we have something here, and so we just have to keep at this. And again, a lot of that goes to the issue of political will, particularly in Washington and Tokyo.
And we will be watching. Ziad Haider, thanks for coming in from the Truman National Security Project. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.